Hi, I'm Veronica and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to show you how to move one particular part of the body that I bet you don't move that often, or maybe you don't move it at all. And actually, once you start moving it, you're going to feel much more supple, you're gonna feel less stiff. It's also going to make your breath much easier and potentially will relieve lots of aches that you might experience in your shoulders or in your back. So today we're going to look at the mobility of your rib cage. You might find it useful to sit on a smaller or taller cushion for this practice. And the first thing we're going to do is just checking how is that mobility at the very moment. So you can sit directly on the heels, or you could use that prop and sit in between of the heels, wherever it feels comfortable for your knees and for your ankles. Find yourself in space, find where is your central axis so that you're not overarching or slumping. And from here, we're just going to check a very simple thing. Let's say you wanted to do the side bending. Does it feel like all of that work comes from your arm and from the shoulder? Or do you feel if you place your hand in between of your ribs on one side of the rib cage that this space is now expanding and there is more space in between of the ribs and between your lowest rib and your hip bone. So that's how you know how much mobility you have at the moment in the rib cage in this plane of movement. You can check the right and the left side, and maybe one feels stiffer than the other. And you also want to check that rotational mobility, how much space you have there. So let's say if you wanted to twist again, does it feel that it's mostly your head, your neck, and your shoulders that twist, but not much is going on here? Or you can feel that the rib cage rotates as well when you're going into a twist. So you can try it for yourself, feel it as you're going to come back to it. All right. Now we're going to get into a deer pose, or something that sometimes is called a Z sit. It's when you have one leg externally rotated, so it's more or less like when you sit cross-legged, and the other leg is internally rotated. So it's like when you sit between the heels. Now, it's very possible that when you're getting yourself into this position and your one hip is very elevated, on one knee is high up, and that doesn't matter so long as you feel that the weight is even on both sit bones. If that doesn't happen, simply get yourself higher, and that should help. So again, you're setting yourself in this position of the legs and finding your central axis. And once you've got that, we're going to go for something more than a twist. It's actually a spiral and it's a whole body movement. So it means that not just the torso participates, but your pelvis is going to be part of it as well. So if you have your right leg internally rotated and left leg externally rotated, you're going to rotate to that leg which is externally rotated. So in my case, to the left. You can place your hand on the shoulder, in front of the shoulder, and then start that movement that involves lifting the hip and feeling the rotation traveling through entire body. So that means it moves also through your belly and lower back. It moves through the entire rib cage and the whole back. And only at the end, it's also the shoulders and the neck. And you could go through this movement a couple of times, really feeling that it's like a wave that moves and a spiral that moves through all of you and doesn't leave any part unmoved. It might begin from the hip, move through the spine, and then end with the neck and head. And after you've done that a couple of times, you can land more in the twist, but not an extreme twist. So you're facing more that externally rotated leg. And in this position, we're going to shorten one side of the body, that side where you have the internally rotated leg. So if your right leg is internally rotated, you place the right hand on your head, maybe even towards your left ear, and you're going to make this squeezing motion. So you could even imagine that you have a very juicy fruit, like a really ripe peach, for example, in between of your hip bone and lowest ribs. And you want to use that squeezing motion, that shortening motion, to open that fruit to make it burst. You could use the exhalation for this movement, and then on inhalation, come back to vertical position. So now, if you have very little mobility in the ribcage, that's not going to feel like a huge movement. But that's why it's important that you keep practicing, so that over time, dehydrated fascia will start moving and sliding and gliding again. Now, after that, feels like there is definitely a movement, and it feels more flowing and easier. And it's really a smooth movement. You could also try how it would be to shorten that other side. How much movement would be on the other side. And obviously there will be less movement because it doesn't have as much space in this particular position. All right, once you've got that, you could go again through the rotational, the spiraling motion. And then let's just change the legs. And you might again notice that on the other side, it feels not so even, that here you need that pillow. So again, if you need a pillow, take it now. You want to feel that you're more or less even on both sit bones. And then the same thing, you can have one hand somewhere outside of the externally rotated leg. The other hand is in front of the shoulder, and you start that spiral. That it's important that it's not just a twist and your pelvis is fixed in place. Your pelvis is part of this movement. They could even start from the pelvis, lifting the hip on the side of the internally rotated leg, and then that movement keeps traveling through you, through the entire spine, the rib cage, the shoulder girdle, the neck and head. Then first your pelvis returns, and then you return to the center. So you could keep going like this a couple of times, feeling that it's really like a wave of movement traveling through all of you, and not a single part of your torso stays immobile. Everything is moving together. After a few of these, let's try the shortening of that side that is on the side of the internally rotated leg. It's much easier here. So if the left leg is internally rotated and left hand is on the top of the head, maybe even reaching towards the right ear, and you're making this squeezing movement. You could use exhalation to make the lower ribs come towards the hip bone, as if you're really squashing something in between of these two bones. You could imagine that juicy fruit being squashed and it just coming out. So a few of these on this side, and there's no point to make it too big. So it's more important that this movement is steady and really fluid rather than that it's very big. We're avoiding any moments where it's like there's a moments of hesitation or almost as if you are staggering. Make it as fluid as possible. And then you could check the other side and there will be much less movement, but it's still going to move a bit. Same thing, squashing that other side of the body. Of course, check that you're not doing this instead of pulling the head and the arm towards the leg. It has nothing to do with that. The movement comes from here. It's your ribcage mobility. So what really moves is that it's like an accordion. You have more space between the ribs and then comes in together. It's almost like you're playing the accordion with your own ribs. All right. And then you could return to that spiraling motion. All right. And we have a few more to go, but we're going to change the position of the legs. So for the next one, you could again sit on the heels or in between of the heels. So you could even stand up if you need a little break from sitting. And here we're going to do that little dance specifically to feel that the ribcage is moving. So the way I like to do it is to place my hand just outside of my ribcage and then try to tap with my ribs that hand. So I'm reaching not with the shoulder, not with the hip, I'm reaching with the ribcage itself. The hand doesn't come to the ribcage, the hand stays, it's the ribcage tapping the hand. And then I can try the same on the other side. And once I have two sides, I could try the same tapping with the front ribs. If I place the hand just in front of me. And the same tapping of the back ribs to the back of the hand behind me. So it might take much longer than what I'm showing right now, but once you start distinguishing these movements and you create the actual or strengthen the neural pathways that are responsible for this movement, you could begin with the circles that come from the ribcage itself. So you're going around your central axis, and the central axis would be your spine, and the ribcage circles around it like the Earth circles around the sun. So obviously other parts of the body will be responding slightly. There will be some movement, maybe in the head, in the shoulders, in the arms, but it's very different from trying to do it from the pelvis. That's how it would look like from the pelvis or from the shoulders, right? Or moving the entire stiff torso in a circle. So you're actually staying in the same place in space, and only the ribcage is circling around. It does take quite a bit of practice, so don't worry that it doesn't quite happen yet. But keep practicing. It's going to be a very, very useful movement. Okay, then you have also the movement of creating a little bit more space in between of the shoulder blades, and then creating a little bit more space in the front, like where the sternum is. You could do it, for example, by creating this sliding motion, but again, do not think so much or do not concentrate on the movement of the arms, because you could do this big movement with the arms and the ribcage might do nothing, as I'm doing right now. So you really want to feel that there is that space between the shoulder blades. and then that the sternum reaches forward and upwards. And the spine is part of it. Of course, it's still a whole body movement. So you're going to feel that the whole back is rounding, that your pelvis is rotating forward and backward. And that's all fine, but your focus here is on this movement in the rib cage, front, back. And the last one, if you sit cross-legged, and again, you can sit on something to be more comfortable here. We're going to go through the two movements which help me really to get that rotational full mobility in the rib cage. So you can begin with reaching the arm up and maybe even reaching with the heel of a hand and with the palm upwards. But then you're allowing, that's very important to understand that you're not really moving from the arm or even from the shoulder itself. You want mostly that movement in the rib cage. So you could first maybe rest the back of the hand, the hand at the back of the head, and lean just very slightly, maybe only with the fingertips to one side. And the movement, again, you might be focusing here on the arm and like pushing the head down, and that's not going to do anything. So again, this is not what I mean. So this is basically your hand and your head will be still. It won't do anything. What will be moving will be your rib cage. So the rib cage rotates so that it's more towards the floor, and the rib cage rotates so that it's facing towards the ceiling. As the hand is in this position, also your arm and your head would rotate, and you will know by the gaze that yes, now is that moment when you're looking upwards. So the chest is opening towards the ceiling, and now it's that movement when you're looking downwards. So there's more opening at the back of the ribcage. But it's even maybe useful to let go of that hand from time to time, so that you know that you're not doing it by pulling by the arm, but this movement really happens anyway, and it happens in the ribcage. And what I really like to do is also to extend the arm, again, without any reaching. It can be really relaxed in the elbow, in the wrist, but you're drawing kind of circles. It's almost as if you imagine that you have that giant beach ball in front of you, and you're sliding your palm over and down that beach ball. So that's when you really get a beautiful movement on that one side of the rib cage. You could even imagine also that you have like a tree growing out of your knee, and you want to hug that tree. So let's try all of this in the other side. Maybe give yourself a moment to feel. There might be a difference between the right side and the left side. You can place the hand at the back of the head. And remember, you're not pushing the head, you're not doing anything with the arm, it's just there. It doesn't do anything. What moves is your rib cage, opening up towards the ceiling and then rotating towards the floor. You might use inhalation when the chest is rotated upwards, and exhalation when it's rotated towards the floor. And once you get that, oh yes, I can feel that this part of the ribcage really rotates, really moves, then you could also extend the arm and create this movement as if you are touching or sliding down that giant beach ball in front of you. So again, it's not about the arm, it's really the whole body movement. And finally, imagine that the tree grows out of your knee and you're giving it a hug. You can do it with the momentum. Okay. You might already feel a lot of aliveness, a lot of spaciousness in the chest. And then let's just check what we started with. So if you start sitting between the heels, let's just go back to the same position so that it feels like a good comparison. And then one more time, go through the side bend and notice if it feels like there's much more movement now in the section of the rib cage, in between of the ribs, between the lowest ribs and the hip bone. And the same if you twist, if you rotate, do you feel now that it's really happening within that section of the spine? I hope that you found this session useful, and if you would like some help with pain, with chronic pain, if that is what brought you here, then you can download my free audio first aid for pain from my website here. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.